misplaced and dangling modifiers. A modifier is a word, phrase, or clause that clarifies or describes another word, phrase, or clause. Sometimes writers use modifiers incorrectly, leading to strange and unintentionally humorous sentences. The two common types of modifier errors are called misplaced modifiers and dangling modifiers. If either of these errors occurs, readers can no longer read smoothly. Instead, they become confused trying to figure out what the writer meant to say. A writer's goal must always be to communicate clearly and to avoid distracting the reader with strange sentences or awkward sentence constructions. The good news is that these errors can easily be overcome. Misplaced modifier. A misplaced modifier is a modifier that is placed too far from the word or words it modifies. Misplaced modifiers make the sentence awkward and sometimes unintentionally humorous. Incorrect. She wore a bicycle helmet on her head that was too large. Correct. She wore a bicycle helmet that was too large on her head. Notice in the incorrect sentence, it sounds as if her head was too large. Of course, the writer is referring to the helmet, not the person's head. The corrected version of the sentence clarifies the writer's meaning. Incorrect. They bought a kitten for my brother they call Shadow. They bought a kitten they call Shadow for my brother. In the incorrect sentence, it seems as if the brother's name is Shadow. That's because the modifier is too far from the word it modifies, which is kitten. Incorrect. The patient was referred to the physician with stomach pains. Correct. The patient with stomach pains was referred to the physician. The incorrect sentence reads as if it is the physician who has stomach pains. What the writer means is that the patient has stomach pains. Simple modifiers like only, almost, just, nearly, and barely often get used incorrectly because writers often stick them in the wrong place. Confusing. Tyler almost found 50 cents under the sofa cushions. Repaired. Tyler found almost 50 cents under the sofa cushions. How do you almost find something? Either you find it or not. The repaired sentence is much clearer. Dangling modifiers. A dangling modifier is a word, phrase, or clause that describes something that has been left out of the sentence. When there is nothing that the word, phrase, or clause can modify, the modifier is said to dangle. Incorrect. Riding in the sports car, the world whizzed by rapidly. As Jane was riding in the sports car, the world whizzed by rapidly. In the incorrect sentence, riding in the sports car is dangling. The reader is left wondering who is riding in the sports car. The writer must tell the reader. Incorrect. Walking home at night, the trees look like spooky aliens. Incorrect. Walking home at night, the trees look like spooky aliens. Correct. As Jonas was walking home at night, the trees look like spooky aliens. Correct. The trees look like spooky aliens as Jonas was walking home at night. In the incorrect sentence, walking home at night is dangling. Who is walking home at night? Jonas. Note that there are two different ways the dangling modifier can be corrected. Incorrect. To win the spelling bee, Louis and Gerard should join our team. Correct. If we want to win the spelling bee this year, Louis and Gerard should join our team. In the incorrect sentence, to win the spelling bee is dangling. Who wants to win the spelling bee? We do. Tip. The following 3 steps will help you quickly spot a dangling modifier. Look for an ing modifier at the beginning of your sentence or another modifying phrase. Painting for 3 hours at night. The kitchen was finally finished by Maggie. Painting is the modifier. Underline the first noun that follows it. Painting for 3 hours at night. The kitchen was finally finished by Maggie. Make sure the modifier and noun go logically together. If they do not, it is very likely you have a dangling modifier. After identifying the dangling modifier, rewrite the sentence. Painting for 3 hours at night, Maggie finally finished the kitchen. See how creative and humorous you can get by writing sentences with misplaced and dangling modifiers. Okay, that's fun to do. Key takeaways. Misplaced and dangling modifiers make sentences difficult to understand. Misplaced and dangling modifiers distract the reader. There are several effective ways to identify and correct misplaced and dangling modifiers. And then the next one, and for the next one, we're going to do chapter 3, section 9, persuasion. So section 3, section 9 is persuasive essay. And so the purpose of persuasive writing. The purpose of persuasion in writing is to convince, motivate, or move readers toward a certain point of view or opinion. The act of trying to persuade automatically implies more than one opinion on the subject can be argued. The idea of an argument often conjures up images of two people yelling and screaming in anger. In writing, however, an argument is very different. An argument is a reasoned opinion, supported and explained by evidence. To argue in writing is to advance knowledge and ideas in a positive way. Written arguments often fail when they employ ranting rather than reasoning. Most of us feel inclined to try to win the arguments we engage in. On some level, we all want to be right, and we want others to see the errors of their ways. More times than not, however, arguments in which both sides try to win end up producing losers all around. The more productive approach is to persuade your audience to consider your opinion as a valid one, not simply the only one. The structure of a persuasive essay. The following 5 features make up the structure of a persuasive essay: introduction and thesis, opposing and qualifying ideas, strong evidence in support of claim, style and tone of language, a compelling conclusion. The persuasive essay begins with an engaging introduction that presents the general topic. The thesis typically appears somewhere in the introduction and states the writer's point of view. Tip: avoid forming a thesis based on a negative claim. For example, the hourly minimum wage is not high enough for the average worker to live on. This is probably a true statement, but persuasive arguments should make a positive case. That is, the thesis statement should focus on how the hourly minimum wage is low or insufficient. Acknowledging opposing ideas and limits to your argument. Because an argument implies differing points of view on the subject, you must be sure to acknowledge those opposing ideas. Avoiding ideas that conflict with your own gives the reader the impression that you may be uncertain, fearful, unaware of opposing ideas. Thus, it is essential that you not only address counter-arguments, but also do so respectfully. Try to address opposing arguments earlier rather than later in your essay. Rhetorically speaking, ordering your positive arguments last allows you to better address ideas that conflict with your own, so you can spend the rest of the essay countering those arguments. This way, you leave your reader thinking that your argument rather than someone else's in this way, you leave your reader thinking about your argument rather than someone else's. You have the last word. Acknowledging points of view different from your own also has the effect of fostering more credibility between you and the audience. They know from the outset that you are aware of opposing ideas and that you are not afraid to give them space. It is also helpful to establish the limits of your argument and what you are trying to accomplish. In effect, you are conceding early on that your argument is not the ultimate authority on a given topic. Such humility can go a long way towards earning credibility and trust with an audience. Audience members will know from the beginning that you are a reasonable writer, and audience members will trust your argument as a result. For example, in the following concessionary statement, the writer advocates for stricter gun control laws, but she admits it will not solve all of our problems with crime. Although tougher gun control laws are a powerful first step in decreasing violence in our streets, such legislation alone cannot end those problems, since guns are not the only problem we face. Such a concession will be welcomed by those who disagree with the writer's argument in the first place. To effectively persuade readers, writers need to be modest in their goals and humble in their approach to get readers to listen to their ideas. Refer to this table for some useful phrases of concession. Although, of course, though, granted that, still, yet. And so if you use concession, it makes you sound more reasonable because you're willing to see you're willing to see that the other side could be correct before you rebut the other side with your argument. Everyone has various biases on any number of topics. For example, you might have a bias toward wearing black instead of brightly colored clothes, or wearing jeans rather than formal wear. You might have a bias toward working at night rather than in the morning, or working by deadlines rather than getting tasks done in advance. These examples identify minor biases, of course, but they still indicate preferences and opinions. Handling bias in writing and in daily life can be a useful skill. It will allow you to articulate your own points of view while also defending yourself against unreasonable points of view. The ideal in persuasive writing is to let your reader know your bias, but do not let that bias blind you to the primary components of good argumentation, sound, thoughtful evidence, and a respectful and reasonable address of opposing sides. The strength of a personal bias is that it can motivate you to construct a strong argument. If you are invested in the topic, you are more likely to care about the piece of writing. Similarly, the more you care, the more time and effort you are apt to put forth, and the better the final product will be. However, the weakness of bias is when bias begins to take over the essay. When, for example, you neglect opposing ideas, you exaggerate your points, or you repeatedly insert yourself ahead of the subject using I too often. Being aware of all three of these pitfalls will help you avoid them. The use of I in writing is often a topic of debate, and the acceptance of its usage varies from instructor to instructor. It is difficult to predict the preferences for all your present and future instructors, but consider the effects it can potentially have on your writing. Be mindful of the use of I in your writing because it can make your argument sound overly biased. There are two primary reasons. Excessive repetition of any word will eventually catch the reader's attention, and usually not in a good way. The use of I is no different. The insertion of I into a sentence alters not only the way a sentence might sound, but also the composition of the sentence itself. I is often the subject of the sentence. If the subject of the sentence is supposed to be, say, smoking, then by inserting yourself into the sentence, you are effectively displacing the subject of the essay into a secondary position. In the following example, the subject of the sentence is underlined. Smoking is bad. So smoking is underlined. And then the second sentence, I think smoking is bad. In the first sentence, the rightful subject smoking is in the subject position in the sentence. In the second sentence, the insertion of I and think replaces smoking as the subject, which draws attention to I and away from the topic that is supposed to be discussed. Remember to keep the message, the subject, and the messenger, the writer, separate. That's why I always tell students you got to use only third-person case, he, she, they, so that the focus is not on the writer, I, my, we, our, us, first-person case, and the focus is not on the reader, you and your, and instead the focus of the essay is on the facts. That makes, if you focus only on the facts, such as smoking is bad, instead of I think smoking is bad, then your paper sounds a lot more credible. Facts. Facts are statements that can be definitely proven using objective data. The statement that is a fact is absolutely valid. In other words, the statement can be pronounced as true or false. For example, 2 + 2 = 4. This expression identifies a true statement or a fact because it can be proved with objective data. Opinions. Opinions are personal views or judgments. An opinion is what an individual believes about a particular subject. However, an opinion in argumentation must have legitimate backing. Adequate evidence and credibility should support the opinion. Consider the credibility of expert opinions. Experts in a given field have the knowledge and credentials to make their opinions meaningful to a larger audience. For example, when you seek the opinion of your dentist when it comes to the health of your gums, you seek the opinion of your mechanic when it comes to the maintenance of your car. Both have knowledge and credentials in their fields, which is why their opinions matter to you. But the authority of your dentist may be greatly diminished should he offer an opinion about your car. In writing, you want to strike a balance between credible facts and authoritative opinions. Relying on one or the other will likely lose more of your audience than it gains. The word prove is frequently used in the discussion of persuasive writing. Writers may claim that one piece of evidence proves the argument, but proving an argument is often not possible. No evidence proves a debatable topic one way or the other. That is why the topic is debatable. Facts can be proved, but opinions can only be supported, explained, or persuaded. Using visual elements to strengthen arguments. Adding visual elements to a persuasive argument can strengthen its persuasive effects. You have quantitative visuals in which you present data graphically. They allow the audience to see statistics spatially. The purpose of using quantitative visuals, that is using numbers, is to make the logical appeals to the audience. So whenever you use graphs, pie charts, Venn diagrams, line graphs, any kind of percentages or numbers, you add credibility to your paper. And so when you add numbers to your paper, you have to cite the source as a direct source. Qualitative visuals present images that appeal to the audience's emotions. Photographs and pictorial images are examples of qualitative visuals. Such images often try to convey a story, and seeing an actual example can carry more power than hearing or reading about the example. When making a business presentation, you typically have limited time to get across your idea. Providing visual elements for your audience can be an effective time-saving tool. Quantitative visuals in business presentations serve the same purpose. They should make logical appeals by showing numerical data as in a spatial design. Quantitative visuals should be pictures that might appeal to your audience's emotions. Choosing a persuasive essay. Choose a topic that you are passionate about. Start by acknowledging and explaining points of view that may conflict with your own to build credibility and trust with your audience. Make your appeals in support of your thesis by using sound, credible evidence. Make sure that your style and tone are appropriate for your subject and audience. Finally, write a conclusion that effectively summarizes the main argument and reinforces your thesis. Key takeaways. The purpose of persuasion in writing is to convince or move readers toward a certain point of view or opinion. An argument is a reasoned opinion supported by evidence. A thesis that expresses the opinion of the writer in more specific terms is better than one that is vague. It is essential that you not only address counter-arguments, but you do so respectfully. It is also helpful to establish the limits of your argument through a concession statement. To persuade a skeptical audience, you will need to use a wide range of evidence, scientific studies, opinions from experts, historical precedents, statistics, personal anecdotes, and current events. Make sure that your word choice and writing style is appropriate for both your subject and your audience. You should let your readers know your bias, but do not let that bias blind you to the primary components of good argumentation. You should be mindful of the use of I in your writing because it can make your writing sound more biased. Facts are statements that can be proven using objective data. Opinions are personal views that cannot be proven. In writing, you want to strike a balance between credible facts and authoritative opinions. Quantitative visuals present data graphically. Qualitative visuals present images that appeal to the audience's emotion. So if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to the Professor H Writing channel. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at any time.